piled in barns by the ocean, awaiting shipment to smelters around the world. The product of hundreds of millions of dollars and years of hazardous work, looks like nothing but a huge pile of dirt. But in fact, it's pay dirt. When it's smelted, each ton yields nearly 700 pounds of copper, 30 grams of gold, and another 30 grams of silver.
We mine the ore at 14,000 feet and we sell it at sea level. And that's a 75-mile distance between those two. Nobody else does that.
In December 1972, the first ship loaded with ore from the Erzberg mine sailed from Irian Jaya. By the 1980s, Erzberg was a huge open-pit mine. The ancient glacial meadow sketched by Jean-Jacques Dozy echoed with the sounds of one of the world's most ambitious mining operations. But Freeport knew that big as it was, Erzberg wouldn't last forever. The company sent geologists deep into the surrounding mountains to search for an even bigger body of ore. A mother lode that would make mining in Irian Jaya profitable long after Erzberg had played out. It was a dirty, dangerous, thrilling job for a few exceptional men and one exceptional woman.
We spent many times really running for the helicopter. You'd be just exhausted, and you'd just get in and almost collapse, but it was either that or spend the night, and it was very cold up there at night.
In the early 1970s, Frank Nelson was one of the first geologists to explore the wilds of Irian Jaya. Working with him was his wife Eleanor, also a geologist.
Our first chore really was developing a map, first topographic and at the same time geologic.
We had one camera that we mounted below the helicopter that Frank would work on a remote control, and I took handheld pictures out the door of the helicopter. Just open the door and point the camera out.
And sort of surprise our drillers sometimes. They say, who in the hell is that up there? Well, he'd be sitting there at the edge of the seat, the feet off the edge, and shooting straight down and trying to get a montage, a mosaic of the area. And even these big, rough, tough Maori drillers, they were impressed by that. So that was one cool woman. People were not familiar with the natives. And we were lucky enough to have more direct day-by-day contact with them. And you got to really like them. A lot of people feared them. They looked pretty dramatic, with painted faces and, bones in the nose and bows and arrows, and they were, ominous looking. But actually, when you got to know them, they had a great sense of humor. We used to ask them for the fun of it, and they always would say, well, not us, but over in the other canyon, those fellas, yeah, they makan orang, yeah, they eat people. And they go over there and say, oh, not us, but those fellas have.
By the 1980s, the Erzberg open-pit mine was no longer profitable and was shut down. But by then, Frank and Eleanor Nelson and other geologists had discovered huge underground copper deposits nearby. It was a rich find, but it wasn't the mother lode Freeport had been searching for. In fact, in the mid-1980s, Freeport almost quit mining in Irian Jaya as a new technology threatened to destroy the world demand for copper. Fiber optic cable was revolutionizing world telephone systems. Many believed it would soon make copper telephone wire obsolete. But in 1984, a new chief executive took over at Freeport. James Robert Moffett was a field geologist who'd spent years exploring for oil and minerals. He wasn't ready to give up on Irian Jaya. He believed in the mother lode.
I looked at New Guinea and saw Papua New Guinea with hundreds of mines that had been explored over the last 150 years, and Irian Jaya with basically the small Erzberg mine. And it's what we call state line geology. It happens all the time. just because this terrain was so horrible in terms of trying to explore it. And people quit at the Papua New Guinea border, and they began to tell themselves that this state line really was some sort of a geologic boundary. Well, that's ridiculous. Geology doesn't know political boundaries, and it never has and it never will.
Moffat was convinced there was more gold in Irian Jaya's primeval hills. He told his geologists to find it. As it happened, a Freeport geologist in Irian Jaya had been thinking about gold and staring at a mountain called Grossberg, less than 2 miles from the Ertsberg mine.